Decoding Learning Differences with Kimberly Lavelle, and this episode is Neurons That Fire Together, Wire Together. In this episode, we're going to go through this quote by Dr. Dan Siegel and apply it in a different way. Usually this is applied more in a psychological, emotional kind of way, but I'm actually going to apply it to a learning perspective. So this is a learning tips video. How can we use this to help our kids learn? Now, I do want to say that neurons that fire together, wire together, and there is an emotional aspect to that. We do want to make sure that when we are trying to teach our kids that they are not in an overly emotional state. If they're super wired excited, they're not necessarily going to be learning much, especially not anything like detailed, right? They might remember the event happening, but not necessarily the details that we're trying to teach. So we tend to need a kind of calm, relaxed, but not overly relaxed state of mind, attentive, but peaceful, right? That's kind of what we're needing. Definitely not in an angry state or anything like that. So emotions are important, and we've talked about that before. We'll talk about it again. It's always there. But what I really wanted to get into today was more about how to use other things to help wire new information. So if we're trying to teach a child a concept, we can be thinking about, okay, every time I teach reading to my child or work with my child on reading, we're always going to sit in this cozy spot on the couch. We're going to turn on this light and create and the rest of the house is going to be quiet, or we're going to have some background music, some soft classical music. All of that is setting an environment for what the child is expecting when they're there. It gets them into a certain state of mind to be ready to work on it. It also helps their neurons wire so that every time they're sitting there, they're remembering the other information they've learned in that spot. So if you work on the same thing in different spots throughout the house, or like out at a park day or in the car, whatever, it's great to do that. But don't be surprised if you're like, why don't you know this? You were doing so good with this yesterday. The environment has changed. When the environment changes, some of those neurons are not firing together because it's not there. Also, sometimes it's just a matter of distractions and things like that, of course. Another part of the environment is the smells. Some people use essential oils to trigger, like, this is learning time. They put on a particular essential oil. That's the trigger that this is learning time. I know there's certain blends that are made to be more about focus and all of that. I'm not an essential oil expert. I'm not necessarily recommending it. I'm just pointing out that smells and memory are very strongly linked and can be used as a learning aid or a recall aid. Time of day. This is both about just the consistency and the scheduling aspect, but also your brain kind of being prepared that at this time of day, I work on this. Those neurons are kind of ready to fire right then. So it can be helpful. Now, the things that are the most effective is like little tricks, phrases, chants, songs, games. I shouldn't even say the most effective, more effective than the others that I mentioned. Really the most effective is background knowledge. So when you're teaching a child something new, every time you can connect that to something else that they already know, that is super effective. You're connecting it to a neuron that's already strong, and it's going to help that other one wire and fire very well. So, but within that, you can use phrases, chants, songs, games, visual cues. One example is they've found that when kids are learning their letters and sounds, one of the most effective ways is if the letter is in the shape of something that is that sound. So they might have an M that is shaped like a mouse. So I've kind of taken a picture of a mouse and a picture of an M and merged it together into an M-shaped mouse. And it's to get the kid to think, okay, mouse, right? They're learning that sound that goes with mouse, and those neurons are firing together. We're connecting things that the kid already knows, their background knowledge that they already have, to a new thing that they're trying to learn and remember. And it then can be generalized to then they see just the M, but they still remember the sound that it goes with. So it's to help make those connections and those bridges. It's not like something they're going to always rely on. They don't have to have the picture of the mouse forever. It's just a stepping stone to get to just seeing the letter, right? And then you have the letter in all sorts of different fonts. And the kids start to generalize in all these different fonts that it always says that same sound. Uppercase, lowercase, like all of this helps. So all of these are things that we can use to help bridge those gaps and learn that new information, to make that link from one thing to another. With all of this, it needs to be used responsibly. One of the things that is unfortunate is that there are a lot of like cutesy little phrases that educators have come up with and shared and spread and repeated for years and years and years. And some of them are just not really very true. One of the ones that you've probably heard is I before E except after C. And it's not true. It's not consistent. Or when two vowels go walking, the first one does the talking. Again, not consistent at all. It's a really not a good thing to teach the kids. But we remember it because it's cutesy, right? And it was repeated so many times, and it was a chant, a phrase. So we don't really want to do that. Instead, there are programs such as the Logic of English, which I talked about last week with the book Uncovering the Logic of English, all about reading. They have rules in them, which sounds kind of boring, but they have rules such as the one I discussed last week, which is C always softens to S when followed by E, I, or Y. Otherwise, C says K. So this rule, you start saying it every time, get the kids to repeat it, it becomes a phrase, a chant that they can say and actually is accurate. They're actually going to remember it and learn from it and be able to apply it. Most of the time, the first thing that happens is they repeat it and they don't apply it. And then you remind them in the moment that it should be applied. What was that thing about C and when C? And they keep saying it, and then eventually it does generalize and they're able to apply it all the time. So books like that and programs like that really do help you come up with those fun little things to repeat. So you do definitely want to use those when you see those in those really high quality programs that are based on the science of reading and that are going to be effective in actually getting what you want, getting your kid to learn the information accurately. Now, I would love to hear how you are going to apply this concept of neurons that fire together, wire together, and how are you going to help your kid learn using this idea? Please think about it. Answer this to yourself at the very least. How will you apply it? When you have an answer, I would love to hear from you. Please email me, Kimberlyn@decodinglearningdifferences.com. You can email me and say, I'm going to do this, or you can say, we just have been doing this, or I agree, I've been doing this with my kid for decades, whatever it is. I would love to hear any stories, any thoughts you have on it. Kimberlyn@decodinglearningdifferences.com. I'm also here if you need any additional help, support, consulting. I do offer consulting programs for parents who need some intensive support in various aspects of their child's education, whether it's IEPs or how to teach them at home. Those are the two most common things that I help with directly. So if you're in need of that, email me, Kimberlyn at decodinglearningdifferences.com. I look forward to hearing from you.